Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Anxiety Chicks podcast. I am Taylor. Obviously, Allison is not with me. I'm joining you from my bedroom because I hurt myself. I tweaked my knee and I'm icing it and just hoping it gets better. As you guys know, I play a lot of pickleball, and so things like this can happen. With that being said, I am recording alone today. I think Allison's out of town somewhere, and I wanted to dive into a topic we don't touch on a lot because I feel like we just haven't gotten there. But when I thought of the topic, I said, oh my gosh, that's so important. So, what we're going to talk about today is if you didn't know, sorry, swallowed air wrong. If you didn't know, I am a registered dietitian. So, I got my undergrad in dietetics. And then I got my master's and I did my internship. I did clinical, I did food service, I did eating disorders, I did so many different routes. So, working in the hospital, working in outpatient, working in the clinics, now into private practice. But throughout all of this, I learned so much about the different areas of dietetics. However, what I've also learned about nutrition, dietetics, diet culture is there's too much. And what I mean by that is you will log on to Facebook or TikTok or Instagram or a magazine or an article from a random website, and you will be fed so many different things. Go vegan, go carnivore, cut out carbs, keto, don't eat nightshades, don't eat plants, eat plants, don't eat certain seafood, don't eat this type of meat, on and on and on and on until you can't take it anymore and you have anxiety. Because what else are you going to have? What else could happen when somebody is constantly telling you, eat this, don't eat that, eat this? It's exhausting. And I think we're in a point in time in our society where diet culture and nutrition and the wellness era, sorry, not error, wellness era is kind of toxic. And I think it's especially toxic for people who say have health anxiety or anxiety in general, and they can get very hyper focused on something, and if they don't do it exactly how they're told, they think, okay, well, this person said that if I don't eat keto, then my blood sugar is going to be completely unstable. I'm going to get diabetes and then I'm going to die. Like, we are fed so many things by so many different people that it's exhausting and it's taxing, and it often leads to system overload for people in their brain, and they end up doing nothing because it's all too much. So, today I wanted to sit down as a registered dietitian who is more holistic and functional medicine, functional nutrition focused. So I focus a lot on individualistic treatments and looking at a person at their whole being rather than just one component or a standardized diet. So when I was working in the hospital, they had diets for each like illness or category you went into. And it annoyed me so bad. I did not like the hospital that much because it was just so, it was not helping the people. Like, it was so, which I understand, like I live in the USA, and there's a lot of insurance claims that have to be done and regulation of how things are paid for. And all in all, it's just everybody I'm sure is doing the best they can for the resources they have. We just don't have the policies in place to make nutrition and healing people from the inside out a focus that are in the hospital. That's a whole other side story. But basically, they give in the hospital, if you're in the hospital, you're on like a standard diet that everybody with, say, heart disease has that same diet. And I just don't believe in that. I don't believe in one thing works for someone else is going to work for someone else. And I think that's the same with mental health treatment too, is that just because so and so took XYZ or did XYZ and got better doesn't mean that that's going to be your route to healing. And that's why it's so important to not let people give up hope when they try something and they're like, that didn't work for me. That means I'm just permanently broken and nothing's going to work for me, because that's not true. And that's because we are all individual humans and we all have a different genetic makeup. We all have different things about us. We all have different gut microbiome. Like we are all so unique down to our gut. Like literally we are so unique, every cell in our body. And so finding what works for you is so important. And so I want to talk about the anxiety that is caused from very triggering things you see online. And then I want to talk about what you can do for your diet if you want to start feeling better without putting so much anxiety into it. So, what I'm seeing a lot, especially with clients who come to me, is they are coming in doing the absolute most and not feeling any better. I think there's a few issues. One issue is people will say, track macros. People start literally just eating boxed foods. They're like, I'm hitting all my macro goals, I'm losing weight, but I just feel horrible. And my practice isn't about losing weight. I've never been a weight loss dietitian. It's just not what I do. I'm very into making someone feel healthy. I want you to feel like I want you to be 70, 80, 90 years old feeling good, not just living on this earth, but living a quality life. So quality over quantity. So I'll have people come to me and they're like, I've lost all this weight and like I still feel bad. And it's like, okay, let me see what you're eating. And then you'll look at what they're eating and how they're tracking. And it's like they're so focused on a calorie count or a macro count that they aren't focused on the quality and then the nutrient dense foods that they're not putting in their body. And they're wondering why they feel depleted. They're wondering why these empty calories are filling up their macro count, but not them. And I think that's one in the diet culture era, right? Another one would be the carnivore diet. So I say carnivore and keto because I think people have talked about both of them. Oh my gosh, did you hear so and so did keto and carnivore and all their autoimmune diseases went away and they were just completely healed? And then I'll have someone come to me and say, I did carnivore, I did keto, it did not help me. If anything, I feel depleted. I feel my stool's weird. I'm having headaches. And while there are other people I see who say it's the best thing for me. So, all these people are having a lot of anxiety over information overload. And that's where we are in society, like I've said. Information overload. And all these people, I mean, even my friends and family I see daily, they didn't go to school for nutrition or dietetics and we're expected to take all this information and wonder which choice is the best choice for us. It's actually, when you really think about it, it's really scary and it freaks me out that all these poor people they'll read one article or see one post or something and then they make it their whole life. Like, I'm going to now go carnivore. I'm going to now go keto. I'm going to now go vegan, when they don't even know if that's what they need. And maybe that's not the first step to feeling better. So I want to talk about, like, if a client were to come to me and, like I said, say this client came to me and they said, I'm on carnivore and I'm not feeling any better. In fact, I feel sluggish. I don't feel good. Well, the first thing I would say to them is, what made you do this? And then a lot of people will either pull up a podcast, someone they follow online, an article, and I'll say, okay, that's amazing. Like that's truly amazing that worked for them. I'm not saying it's not going to work for you, but let's look at the bigger picture of things right now. And a lot of times it's this huge stress around making sure you're doing it right and I'm using air quotes right now, doing it right, that you are causing so much inflammation in your body by being so stressed over what you should and shouldn't eat. If you're going to have availability to carnivore type diets to someone's house you're going to for dinner, or if da 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 da, da all these things, right? Where you become so anxious about having this lifestyle to feel better that you make yourself feel worse. And in the long run, it doesn't work out, because also a lot of this isn't sustainable. And that's a huge thing, is putting your body through warfare of up and down diets is so stressful to the body and like not good for the body. So that's my first tip. Cut out any nonsense you've heard of anything extreme. Unless you've been told by a doctor or dietitian and you've had this plan and they've looked at you as an individual, cut it out. And what I'd rather you do, and this is what I do with my clients, is I start from ground zero. So I'll start and I'll literally have a client journal like a whole week of food and like what they eat, just a normal week. I want to give them no input. I want to recommend nothing to them, and they will show me what they eat. So then I go through and I'm like, okay, let's run some labs. Let's run some, and not just labs like your primary care doctor runs. I'm talking, I want a stool sample. I want to look at your gut. I want to look at your heavy metals. I want to look at if you're even digesting proteins. I want to look at your hormones. I want to look at your inflammation factor. All that stuff, like that plays such a role into what is going to work for you. And when I do that, and even if I don't do that for a client, so say I don't do that, I will start with just the basics. So say someone says, I don't want any blood work, any tests done. I can't afford it. And that's the other thing. None of this is cheap. That's the sad part, is like running labs, especially these more preventative labs. It's not cheap, and it stinks that we in society have to decide on our health because we need to spend money on something else in our lives. So I always give people that option. I never want people to feel like if they can't afford that component that they're just out of luck and they need to go find someone else to look for help. My next option would be, let's start small. Let's start with the basics. And I think a lot of times people want to go on these extreme lifestyles. They go in and they go so hard because they probably got themselves so anxious from learning something that they go, 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 and then they come to a quitting point because it's not sustainable. So my first few things I start with people are, especially women, is, are you getting enough protein? 9 times out of 10, I have women who are getting 30 to 50 grams of protein. And if you're listening to this, I want you to literally take note of that. And I want you to track your calorie intake, not your calorie intake. I want you to track your meal consumption intake of protein, just protein. And I want you to see how much protein you're getting in a day, because I think you're going to shock yourself. And by guidelines, they want you to have at least 0.8 to 1, some people say 1.5 grams of protein per body weight. So if you're, which a lot of women run between 120 to 175, I think is the like, granted, I'm not talking about a certain height. So if we're talking about height, 5'3" to 5'8", you're looking at them needing about 100 something grams of protein. So that's the first step. And if you're not meeting your protein goals, you shouldn't be focused on anything else, because our hormones work so hard off of protein, and us women have failed in protein intake. And even just as a society, I've seen protein intakes just decrease for people. Another thing is vitamin D. Low vitamin D can make you feel not good. It can cause brain fog, fatigue, so many things. And once again, 9 times out of 10, the people I draw blood work on, their vitamin D is low. So low protein, low vitamin D, Another one is B12. A lot of times I see that being low, which B12 a lot of times we get from proteins. So that's usually low. All these things combined alone, just those three things, could make someone feel off. And if you're looking to feel good, I think starting with the basics. So these are some of the first steps I take with clients because system overload causes anxiety, which causes inflammation, which it just isn't good for us. Getting that level of cortisol up isn't going to do anything good for us. You might as well not be on that diet. So, like I said, if you want to take anything away from this, go see someone who specializes in functional nutrition, functional medicine. Start there if you want, if you have the funds to do so. If you don't, start with protein intake. Make sure you're hitting your protein goals. Start with vitamin D levels. Make sure you're getting adequate vitamin D. 15 minutes in the sun is so good for you. Start with getting B12 in, which a lot of times is going to be from meat products. You can take a supplement, but you also have to worry about bioavailability to the body. So that's another part to focus on. And these are simple things. These aren't things you need to overthink or let consume you. These are just a few checkpoints in your day. And you can even create a routine of how you're going to get them in. But that's definitely where you should start. My computer cut me off mid conversation, but like I was saying, is simplifying things that don't have to be so chaotic, so many moving pieces when life is already so stressful, when anxiety is already too much and you can't take any more information. Start with the basics. Only focus on the things you can control and don't worry about all these other things you can't control. And once you start small, I want to give you just 4 things to take away that you can take and try out in your life and let me know if doing these 4 things makes you feel a little better, because 9 times out of 10 when I do this with clients, they see a little bit of a change. If they're dealing with something a little deeper, it takes a little while. Like I said, we're all individual, but these are some really good starting points to not let your brain be so anxious about what you should do and what you shouldn't do, and all this information that you end up just going to a local fast food chain and getting food because you are so stressed that you stress eat. Like, I've seen this so many times, and I've been victim in the past of information overload. So 4 things to start with. 1, hit your protein goal. Try and do zero point 0.8 to 1.5 grams. I would start with 0.8 because you also don't want to just shock your system of like just so much protein, but like see how much protein you're intaking and then start with, let's just say, 1 gram of protein per body weight pound. So if you weighed 130 pounds, you would have 130 grams of protein in a day, and finding a way to get that into your diet, mostly from real food sources and not powder supplements. A protein shake is totally fine, but if you're just eating like 5 protein shakes a day, probably don't do that. Secondly, I want you to really focus on inflammation. So I kid you not, if you honestly didn't even do these 4 things, if you literally just cut out processed foods, and I believe in everything in moderation. I really, really do. If there is a get together, a birthday, a celebration, a fun night, a anything, I'm all for like having a meal. We have to live in 80/20. Like I said, if we get on these extremes, we cause ourselves more anxiety, more stress, more inflammation. So while I say cut out processed foods, really try and 80% of your day, 80% of your life, cut out that packaged stuff. You don't need it. Seed oils are super inflammatory for our body. Cutting that out, that alone would make you feel amazing. So, protein intake, cutting out processed foods when you can. And then the third one we talked about was vitamin D. So many people are deficient in vitamin D B12, and I forgot to mention magnesium. These three supplements, which you can get through diet, but if you need to supplement with them, I have a, not a dispensary. It's a supplement dispensary through FullScript, which a lot of functional nutrition and medicine doctors and practitioners use for their clients to purchase actually third party lab tested, very, very, very studied supplements, because the supplement industry is super messy and there's not a lot of regulation. So when it comes to needing to supplement, I highly recommend something where you know what you're getting, you know that there's bioavailability to the body, and you know it's going to do more good than harm, because come to find out, there's a lot of supplements in this world that aren't what they say they are. So really focusing on getting on a supplement that is high quality, high bioavailability, and checking those boxes of that. So that's my third, and fourth would be the vitamin D and vitamin B12. Lastly would be water intake. A lot of people are dehydrated, and it's not just about drinking water. If I chugged a gallon of water every day, which I know people get on these trends of like 75 hard, and like I think part of 75 hard is you have to drink a gallon of water a day. And truly, you could end up, if you're just drinking basic, plain, purified water from your refrigerator's purifier, you're most likely stripping your body of a lot of things you need because you're just flushing your system. And so I like to recommend a natural electrolyte at all times, anytime you're drinking water, if you can. A pinch of lemon and a pinch of any type of Himalayan salt, Celtic salt. There's so many different kinds, but a hydration, remineralizing your water. All these things, these small things I'm recommending, are so easy and attainable, and all you should really focus on before trying to get into this big picture mindset of stressing yourself out, starting some random diet, going all in, and then next week there's a new article out that says, oh, come to find out, this diet is actually causing cancer. Because I've seen that stuff too, and that is just not good for clients. So, to take from this episode, and we'll dive more into, it's kind of hard doing an episode like this when my brain's running of so many things I want to say, but it's better to do it in a conversational moment with Alison, or someone who doesn't have a dietetics or the my mind, what the questions would be. What are some things I'm not explaining correctly, or maybe I'm explaining and you're like, wait, what's that mean? I'm very curious on what you would like to know more about, especially anxiety and diet, because there's such a connection. 90% of our serotonin is created in our stomach. I mean, that's our feel good hormone. That is what makes us not feel anxious, not feel depressed. And if our gut is imbalanced, our gut microbiome is imbalanced, like so many people's are in today's society, leaky gut syndrome is literally in almost all people. And a lot of that can be from stress of, what do I eat? What do I not eat? And causing your body this very stressful feeling around food. We want to cut that out. So let me know your questions. Let me know if I even made sense at all to you, or maybe I sounded like I was wanting to say so much at one time. But start with those 4 or 5 things I gave you. See if anything changes for you. And let me know your feedback. All right. We'll talk to you next week, guys. Have a great week.